And we are live here on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. What's up, guys? Nick Scripp on the P2W Fantasy Podcast, plugging away in the fantasy off season. I'm excited about this show today because it's been a hell of an NFL week. We got some stuff to talk about, and I have two great guests with me today. And I appreciate these guys because last night, just randomly, I'm like, man, I need a co-host because I was thinking about doing a solo pod. I was supposed to have my brother. He couldn't do it. And both of these guys just raised their hand, and I had to smash the accept button there. So let me introduce both guys on the show here today before we talk about anything football related. So we'll start off things here with Abe. So Abe, I had the pleasure of being on your show, the DFS Docket. You're also a member of the Undroppables, which I respect that team immensely, always have. So I'm glad that you became a part of that team. But you plug away often with your show, being a part of it before. Very impressed with the way you conduct yourself as a host. So I'm happy to have you on my show today as a guest. So let everybody know where to find you on social media, especially if they are just listening to this in their car later, and talk about what you got going on, man.
For sure. Well, first off, I appreciate you having me on. Most people, I try and put myself out there and say, hey, I'll come on all these shows. And then most people just ignore me. So like Matthew Berry and all those guys, I tell them all the time, I'll hop on.
Unbelievable.
They tell me to, go to hell. So I appreciate you big time over here, Nick, P2W. I appreciate you, you accepting my request to come on.
Of course.
You can find my show, the DFS Docket. I'm super excited. I recently just joined the Undroppables Network. It's unbelievable how much stuff they're doing over there. So I'm incredibly excited to be a part of their group. I'll be running the DFS Docket out of there, continuing to do what I do between interviews. Not as good of interviews as this guy below me. I mean, that guy's been like a rock star with interviews. I don't even know how he gets the people that he gets. I'll do a step below him. I'll get like guys, and that's okay. That's all. I like talking to people. So continuing with interviews and fantasy football, I'll be running the redraft stuff, some DFS stuff, and I'm super excited, and I appreciate you having me on tonight.
Absolutely. Appreciate your time. Awesome stuff to look forward to. Check out Abe if you guys are not following him already. Also in the show here, David. David's been one of my OG friends here in the space. Great guy. We had the pleasure of actually meeting in person at the Expo last year. We've collaborated a bunch in the past before, but co-founder of the Triple Play Fantasy team, which I, again, respect a ton, what you guys got going on over there. I want to give your team a shout out too, because I've had different members outside of you and Jacob and Kevin and Eric on the show before. And every time somebody from Triple Play is on my show, they do a great job. They come prepared and they're very knowledgeable. So I really respect what you guys got going on over there. Your team is part of the Fantasy Points Media Group as well. Not just football. You guys talk basketball, baseball, other topics. You also write for Fantasy Pros, the 33rd team, and Fan Track. So D. Mendy, where can we find you, buddy? Thanks for coming on the show and talk about what you got going on.
Nick, man, you're like my brother from another, man. So it's always a pleasure hopping on with you, my friend. And yeah, man, pretty much like you said it, all my writings across those three sites, 33rd team and Fan Tracks and Fantasy Points, and then all my video content podcasting stuff's usually always through Triple Play. And we just love making stuff, man. Like, you're a both you guys, content creators, great hosts. And that's what I like doing. I just like making content, interviewing guys. And this is kind of like our break away from our real lives, our real responsibilities. This is doing something that we love. And I would not be happier doing it with you two tonight. This is a good group. And I love always everything P2W does. Like, I mean, you talk about baseball, basketball, football. You do the same thing, but you pretty much do it almost all entirely. I know your brother helps you out some, but you do so much yourself, which is what I always respect about you, because you're kind of doing the work of like 20 guys. So I tell you that you are probably the guy I think that works the hardest in this industry over anybody else. And it's not just because I know you from the longest that I said that, but truly always pumped to always come and join you on his show, man.
Absolutely. Appreciate the words greatly, man. It means a lot to me. Excited for the show tonight. It's going to be a good one. Before we jump into the show, I do want to say this podcast, along with Triple Play, is partnered up with the Fantasy Points Media Group, fantasypoints.com. It's the one-stop shop for all of your fantasy needs. If I'm looking for articles, rankings, projections, you name it, it's all on fantasypoints.com. Promo code P2W22. go check that out. So what we got going on today, NFL news topics. We're going to talk about some pre-free agency, dynasty, trade targets as well. Stick with us on the show here.
Play to win, no fear to give. I feel but I can't forgive. I go all in this time, yeah, I won't regret. I'll pick the best on trip, they don't understand. I play to win, yeah, I play to win, I play to win. Yeah, I play to win, I play to win. Oh, play to win, I play to win. Yeah, play to win, I play to win.
All right. If you are joining us and you want to be a part of the show, you can comment, but you have to do it on YouTube, unfortunately, because we still can't see the comments here on Twitter. Hopefully that gets fixed. But NFL news, been a crazy week. I only grabbed a couple topics. We had a bunch of different things happen this week. We had guys getting tagged. We had some trades going on, but I selected two big ones to talk about. And I first want to talk about the Calvin Ridley suspension. I think that a lot of us have talked about it enough already, it seems like, but I like to hear different opinions on it. It's a guy that I personally am kind of kicking myself in the ass a little bit because I was promoting him all off season as a big buy. And obviously you don't see these things coming, but Calvin Ridley suspended 1 year for betting related to the NFL. So the NFL came out and said they found him betting. He's going to be suspended at least a year. Here's a series of tweets, and then I'll ask about your guys' opinions here. From Calvin Ridley, and it goes in this order. Football is life. Laughing emoji. I learned from my L's. I bet 1,500 I don't have a gambling problem. I couldn't even watch football at that point. Just gonna be more healthy when I get back. I know I was wrong, but I'm getting 1 year. LOL. If you know me, you know my character. So a series of Ridley tweets after this happened. David, what's your thoughts on anything related to the Calvin Ridley suspension?
I mean, he broke sleeper. Like that news.
Oh man.
When I saw that come out, I had to like double check my phone. I was like, what is going on? It's pretty wild when you think about it, but my hunch is he's the first one that got caught. This wasn't the first time this has been happening. I think it was, I forgot, it was Hard Rock or something that reported that he had made the bet, something like that. So that's the first and foremost. But I think as far as the full year suspension, I think it was needed. And you kind of hear things. I was on a call with the 33rd team today, and they have some coaches, past and present, that come on, and they just are speaking from what their point of view is. And they said, this is something that you emphasize in the locker room from day one. And they said, if this wasn't set in place right away, this harsh type of punishment, you're going to potentially have players affect the integrity of the league. So they had to go overboard to make sure that this stuff does not happen again. It had to be swift and it had to be harsh. There wasn't any time where they were kind of debating on what was going to happen. So, people might bring up the domestic violence thing, and that needs to 100% be equal to what this is. They should both be year-long suspensions. But this was definitely the right call as far as the length. And I think the scary part about Calvin Ridley now is he's going to be 29 when next time he potentially takes the field. He's not going to have played in almost 2 seasons. And you got to wonder what it's going to be like when he does come back out there, because that's going to be something that's going to be scary for anybody that owns him in a dynasty league, is what's going to happen when he does eventually go back out on the field.
And we do have some comments in the chat. My buddy here, Fantasy Good Sports, he said he will never be an alpha wide receiver again because of the time off the field. Solid number 2 rest of career. So there definitely is a lot of opinions on what's it going to look like when he comes back, which comes into the fantasy play, of course, which we can talk about in a second. But I want to shift over to Abe. Abe, same wave as Dave, a little bit different. What do you think about this Calvin Ridley suspension?
Everyone talks about when he comes back. I think it's if he comes back, and I don't think it's up to him. We talk about it's 1 year. Right now it's an indefinite with a minimum of 1 year. I mean, we're all baseball fans. How long of a suspension is Pete Rose serving for really doing the same thing? You can't bet on sports that you have a say in, right? That's in the business world, that's called insider trading. People go to prison for doing things like that. In football, it's not called insider trading, but it's really the same thing. And he says, it's only $1,500. I don't have a gambling problem. I don't think anyone's saying you have a gambling problem. I don't think that's the issue at hand here. You could have bet $5. Yeah. But once you put any dollar amount on a game that you have an actual say in changes everything. 1 year to me isn't enough for him. And I know there's all these people saying out there that Ray Rice got 6 games. Greg Hardy only got a couple of games. The two have zero to do with each other. Like the way the NFL handles its domestic violence rules and regulations. Josh Gordon never gets to play because the dude just can't stop smoking weed. Has zero to do with this Calvin Ridley situation. And people need to stop comparing the two of them. It's absolutely ridiculous. I feel like Stephen A. It's ridiculous. It's preposterous. But at the end of the day, Calvin Ridley can't be betting on football. And this whole mental health thing, I'm not going to say that it's the reason why, but the two of these things coming out at the same time is such a big red flag, where if news came out that he was in with the bookie somewhere and they told him, hey, your team better lose the next 6 games. And he goes, you know what? Instead of, I can't be on the field and trying to lose, I'm just going to back out. And in today's day and age, I'm going to play the mental health card, and everyone's going to be on my side right now and not asking, oh, it's an injuries and things like that. I might be very off base here, but it's too many coincidences and red flags just facing each other head on.
Yeah, it's definitely something to think about when it comes to everything piling up and what that means long term. And it is the thinker when you bring up the different things that have popped up for him. And it's unfortunate for a guy like him to have one thing that takes him out of football lead to another one. Maybe they're tied, maybe they're not tied at all. I like the points about how like we shouldn't compare certain things. I do agree that the NFL kind of has bitten itself in the past because they haven't really dealt with certain things the way that they should have. But at the end of the day, like trying to enforce rules, they're doing it here with Ridley. I think about playing college soccer, and a big thing was like making sure that you abided by the NCAA rules. And like sometimes the rule meant you can't go out and do drugs, or the rule was as small as, hey, you can't accept any dollar amounts from outside organizations for your participation in sport, amateurism. So there's a wide range of things, but if you break things at the end of the day, then it is what it is. I've had this really push and pull about, hey, they're not really doing good with these things, but at the same time, like if they say you can't wear neon shoes to games and you do it, then you broke the rule. But
you don't need to like the rules. You just need to play by them. Like I would love to have 5 downs, but I only get 4. What's the difference?
My question, kind of capping this whole thing off. I play in dynasty leagues. I'm talking a lot of dynasty leagues on this podcast here. A lot of people are wondering, what do I do? It's not the people saying, hey, should I go get him? Give me advice. It's really not those people we want to aim for. It's the people that have Calvin Ridley on their team right now. And they're starting to get some people knocking on the door saying, here's a random 5th, and here's this guy that's going to retire next year. I mean, there's a lot of push and pull with that. So what is your suggestion to people that roster him in dynasty? We'll go back to David.
I mean, honestly, at this point, his value is obviously going to be the lowest it can be. There's no way it's going to get any lower. You just got to make sure you're not selling him for just complete trash. Like, I understand this is a sell low. Like, I mean, this is pretty much a selling point for him because you don't know when you're going to get him or when you're going to get him back on the field. So personally, any type of dynasty league that I have him in, I'm holding him because people are right now going to throw the scraps, right? But then we hear, he still has an appeal. So then tomorrow he could have an appeal and it's reduced to 8 games or something like that. And then all of a sudden you sold him for trash and you shouldn't have. So if I have him, I'm holding him. I'm going to wait it out till kind of like things kind of settle down a little bit. And then I might look to move him if I find an offer I like. But if you have him, you can't panic to where you're just giving him up for the first offer that's sent your way. You got to wait to just make sure how things play out and let things kind of settle down. Because we know everybody loves to overreact and they love to jump on the people that overreact around this time.
What?
It's crazy, right? Crazy.
Twitter world, especially in the Twitter world. Abe, same page, or do you think differently here for
yeah, I'm with Mendy on 100% here, actually, where if you have him, you have to hold him unless you get an offer that blows you out of the water, which is just dumb at this point. But if you get that offer, take it. If you get a player that is startable, take it. Anything else than that, hold, because like Mendy said, his value has never been lower, and probably never will be any lower unless he flat out retires and turns into Pat McAfee and gets a DraftKings deal. Can you imagine he gets some sort of DraftKings deal like that instead?
Unreal. That'd be something else. That'd be something else for sure. Yeah, unless, I mean, I think the benefit to your team that if something crazy happens in the sense of him, getting his suspension right now lessened, that benefit of still having him versus taking 2/3 or something that's not going to help your team now or later, I think is just worth the hold right now. I think we're all on the same page for that. It's interesting because I'm sure he's not the only guy in the league who did what he did, but knowing that he's a bigger name guy and him getting caught, he's going to be an example now of something that the NFL is definitely putting their foot down. But I'm with the hold stance. Unless it's going to change your dynasty team, then just hold. You didn't have him for most of last season anyways, so it's not like you were just completely banking on him unless you waited super long in a startup and he was your wide receiver 2 or something like that. Moving on, massive deal between the Seahawks and the Broncos. This if the Ridley news broke Sleeper, I don't know what this did to Sleeper because this was huge. The Seahawks in a trade received QB Drew Lock, tight end Noah Fant, defensive line Shelby Harris, 2 first-round picks, 2 second-round picks, and a 5th-round pick. Denver on the flip side got their quarterback Russell Wilson and a 4th. So this was huge news. And of course, us talking primarily about fantasy on this podcast, we have to ask, who gets the biggest bump, either team, for fantasy? Abe, what are you thinking on this?
I mean, you have to think the Broncos. I mean, Seattle just is giving up at this point. I mean, who's throwing the ball to DK? Who's throwing the ball to Tyler Lockett? Chris Carson, we still don't know what he's going to do. So it has to be Denver. And those receivers, you have to absolutely love them now. But I do want to bring up one guy that is getting so much love right now, and I just don't understand it, and that's Albert Obi-Wan Kenobi. Because everyone talks about, he's going to get all the opportunity now. Noah Fant isn't there anymore. And now they have a great quarterback in Russell Wilson. And all those things are 100% factual. But when is the last time Russell Wilson gave us a top 12 fantasy tight end? Like Jimmy Graham back in the day? And Jimmy Graham at that point was a top level elite tight end. So unless you think Albert Abalabi is going to be that guy, like, why are you paying up for that dude? Nah, get him out of my life. I'm done with him.
All right. That's a good call right there too, because it seems like obviously everybody's talking about the rising stock, emoji, and he's been a big name. So I like that. I like that firm stance there. But I'm gonna shift down to Mendy. Same question. Who gets the biggest fantasy bump here in this deal?
It's like Abe just kind of put that on a silver platter for me to serve this up here. I think Albert O is the biggest winner from this.
What's his real last name? What's his real last name? Say it.
It's Ogu Ebunam. Actually, yeah, okay. I made sure I put that out.
You guys said it very differently, so we're gonna have to decipher what was right.
But there's a couple reasons I think that he's going to be the biggest winner. Obviously, Jerry, Judy, Cortland Sutton, they're going to be winners. But Albert Oguebunam is now the number 1 tight end in Denver. And I want to credit Jacob Sanderson on Twitter who put this out. He was the tight end 3 in target rate across his 32% of routes. And he's obviously going to run a lot more routes this coming season. He caught 33 of 40 targets last year for 330 yards and 2 touchdowns. And you talked about how Russell Wilson obviously doesn't use his tight ends, but we saw it a little bit more this season, especially when he came back from his injury, because Gerald Everett from weeks 12 through 16, he was the tight end 7 over that stretch and had career highs of 47 catches, 458 yards, and 4 touchdowns last year. So I do think, keep in mind, Russell Wilson hasn't had great tight ends. He's had like Will Dissly, the back 9, Jimmy Graham, Jacob Hollister. He hasn't had. Greg Olsen at that point too wasn't
the end of his career. Yeah. No, I wasn't suggesting him being a top level player. I was suggesting what you said, like bottom trash type of Greg Olsen, who I love, but he wasn't Greg Olsen when he was Greg Olsen there.
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously Jerry Judy and Cortland Sutton are going to be the top 2 targets in this offense. But if assuming that the Broncos don't draft a tight end and maybe they surprise us and they go get, like one of the top tight ends in this draft, I don't know if they'll go and they're not going to get like a Trey McBride, but they might go ahead and they might get Jalen Weidermeyer, or they might go ahead and get, one of those guys that kind of the 3rd or 4th tight ends in this class, like, the Isaiah Likely out of Coastal Carolina. These guys, if those guys come in, then I might be a little bit more worried. But if they don't draft to spend, a top 4 round pick on a tight end, then I got to think that at the worst, maybe he's a tight end 8 to 12, which if you can kind of get him towards the end of your draft, like, if you punt the tight end position, I don't see the problem with it. I don't think many people have him as a tight end 1 outside of them just like messing around and just joking. But he's somebody that's going to, if you punt the position, you're going to be able to grab him at the end of your drafts and feel probably fine about it.
Can I give one more name of a guy that I think is going to stand out?
Because absolutely. And then I'll shift into my questions here. I'm going to put you guys on the spot.
So I think there's one guy that's going to – Tyler Lockett was great with Russ, right? I mean, great overall, like over the season, had a great season, although, his games came in waves.
Mm-hmm.
How about KJ Hamler coming off the ACL injury? I know it's worse than just the ACL, so he might need some rehab time. Everyone's in on Sutton and Judy, but I think KJ Hamler runs that Tyler Lockett, like, deep routes, and Russell Wilson has one of the prettiest deep balls, and he played in that thin air. Instead of the ball going 60, it's going to go about 70, 75. I mean, to KJ Hamler just running that 9 go route, I like Hamler a lot.
I wonder if they build a connection later, if that's going to take away from Sutton, because I think that Sutton profiles as a guy that can take the top off and go deep, whereas Judy is going to be all over the field. So if Hamler takes off, I think his hurt is going to be on Sutton. And I mean, my guy for this, you guys mentioned the 2 wide receivers, and I'm gonna go back to the tight end after this, but I do want to say Jerry Judy. Been a massive Judy fan. I've been one of the guys that has stuck with him, and everybody always says, like, what has he done in the NFL to prove anything? And we've had these small glimpses of what I think Jerry Judy can be, and he's a guy that I think is going to be highly targeted for one. We saw it this year, but it was very much a different schemed offense than we probably wanted it to be for Jerry Judy. He had the injuries as well. His rookie season, he had 140 and 125 yard receiving day. Like, that was a little glimpse of it, but profiling is a guy that, again, we all know, elite route runner, gets open very well, ball in his hand, can make plays. I am so excited to see him with the quarterback because we can point the finger at Jerry Judy not being healthy and not showing us much, but we can also point the finger at having Drew Lock year 1 with the worst bad throw percentage in the league. And then Teddy Bridgewater, who at times was not really throwing the ball a ton because they had 2 running backs pounding the rock. So I am so excited about Jerry Judy because a lot of people were out. And during that time of people being out for Dynasty, that was your buying window. And I was on a podcast mid-January, and I said, now is the time, because the minute anybody, Abe or David or Nick, is the new quarterback, then people are going to start looking at Jerry Judy. So I'm all in on him. But I do want to go back to the tight end because you both brought him up, and I'm gonna give you a this or that, no explanation. Dynasty tight ends right now on the spot. It's gonna be a fun show today because we had a small show sheet, and I'm gonna spice things up here. But Albert O. So we'll just go. We'll go Abe to David. Who would you prefer now in Dynasty, Albert O. or Irv Smith Jr.?
Oh, barf. Give me Albert O. Only because I don't know who Irv Smith's quarterback is going to be the next 4 years.
All right, David.
I'm Irv Smith. I think Albert O could be relevant this year. I don't think he's the long-term answer in Denver. I think Irv Smith still potentially isn't tapped into yet.
All right. Albert O or Zach Ertz in Dynasty?
Give me Ertz, because I think over the next when I look at Dynasty, I look at 2 to 3 years. Can I win? So I'd rather take Ertz in that position.
Wow. This is actually a tough one.
Like it.
Yeah, this is a good one.
I thought he was going to ask Albert O or Travis Kelce. I was like, that's
Here we go, Kyle Pitts.
Yeah, I mean, I'll go Albert O because I wouldn't be shocked if Zach Ertz calls it a career after next year.
Okay, last one. Real question: Albert O or Noah Fant?
give me Noah Fant and the talent. They're not going to stick with Drew Lock for the next few years. They're going to find somebody else.
Yeah, like if Malik Willis or somebody steps in there and electrifies that offense, and he's their safety blanket, I'll go Noah Fant. Obviously, like Abe said, it's not going to be Drew Lock. Yeah, Kevin. Apparently, I get invited to shows.
Shocker. Yeah, I was about to say we got trolls in the comment section just screaming out like acronyms, CEH, whatever that stands
What a
for.
troll.
I know, just this guy's always knocking on the door in the comment section, but we'll keep things rolling over here. But that's interesting because, again, one day of pieces being moved, and now people are starting to ask, where does this guy rank in Dynasty, and where is he going to go in startups? So I like the different perspectives from you guys with Albert O for that one. You guys pronounced that last name a little bit different, so we'll keep it to that. So big question to cap off this trade. We obviously know Russell Wilson was brought to Denver to win, right? We saw the same thing happen years ago with Peyton Manning, and I'm not going to compare those two guys at all, but it's the same sort of thing. You bring in a guy to come and win. That's the same thing with Wilson. On the flip side, we saw the news break about another quarterback, Aaron Rodgers, being back in Green Bay. As a Chicago fan, I mean, whatever. Like, I didn't want that to happen, but it is what it is. He's back in Green Bay. So my question to you guys is, and I stole this from like Sports Center. I was at the gym this morning, but who has more pressure to win a Super Bowl in 2022? Is it Aaron Rodgers returning to the Packers, or is it Russell Wilson, who is now a Denver Bronco? And Abe, we'll start with you on this one. Who is under more pressure?
It's an easy answer, and it's obviously Aaron Rodgers. The guy goes back to, we don't know the money yet. I know there's reports that what it is and reports of what it isn't, but he's obviously going back there with the purpose to win the Super Bowl. I know Stafford won it this year in his first year with LA. I know Brady won it the year before in his first year in Tampa Bay. But if Russ doesn't win in his first year, it's very easy to articulate to the masses, hey, it takes some time. Like, this isn't the rule. Brady and Stafford, that's not the rule. That's the exception as to what happened. So don't expect me to come in here and be the exception. Expect me to come in here and be the rule. And if we win, awesome. It's just the cherry on top. But sometimes it takes a little time to build that chemistry and to get used to the Denver air and all that crap that he might put out there. But it's absolutely 100% all the pressure's on Aaron Rodgers to win right now.
All right, so Abe is on the Aaron Rodgers must-win now train. David, do you agree, or do you feel that it's Russell Wilson?
Well, before I say I agree, or just did you see Big Cat's tweet after Aaron Rodgers signed? Do you guys follow Big Cat?
No, I did not see it.
Oh, like, so he was like, he's a Bears fan, so
yeah,
he tweeted out, he was like, I can't believe that asshole Aaron Rodgers would announce this on National Women's Day and take away from everything else. He's like, what a dickhead. There's something like, it was really hilarious.
That is funny.
But it's Aaron Rodgers. Yeah. If you look at it, Aaron Rodgers is in a NFC that has the Rams and Cowboys as the only realistic contenders at this point. Like, can you name another team that you're like, they're for sure in a contender? I mean, you look at the Niners, they'll have Trey Lance starting next year. We have no idea what that's going to mean. And you have the Rams running it back potentially, and you have the Cowboys who have a good offense, but are going to lose Amari Cooper. So like, then you look at the AFC, and now you're adding Russell Wilson to a stacked AFC. I don't need to list all the quarterbacks. You guys already know the teams and quarterbacks in the AFC. You also obviously have no Tom Brady in the NFC anymore, so that's a huge domino that's not there anymore that he has to go through. And you look at the division, Aaron Rodgers and Nick, I apologize, the Bears are not contending it right at this moment. You got the Lions and you got the Vikings. And then, I mean, guys, come on. It's Rodgers. He's making the most money in the league of any other player too. Like, Abe, you hit it on the head. I think it's got to be Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, back-to-back MVPs. You know, he's got the one ring. Packers have been like super close and looking like one of the favorites the last few years. and then they choke in the playoffs. So he does have that pressure, all the drama that comes with Aaron Rodgers, a lot of focus on him. Will they do it? I don't know. It'll be interesting to see if they actually make a move in this draft to go and pair Davante Adams with a non-MVS and Allen Lazard receiving.
I heard Sam Howell high on their list in the first round.
I was about to say it's got to be a quarterback and a running back to add a third piece to that committee that they have over there. It would only make sense. But yeah, we can wrap things up there. I do want to finish by saying a list of names. I missed it on my point here, but Michael Thomas, Tyreek Hill, Chris Godwin, Cooper Kupp, Mike Evans, DeAndre Hopkins, Jerry Judy. He's going to be the next third-year breakout. I'm not going to say I'm calling it, but that's what he's got in common with these guys. But
call your shot. Call it.
I'm saying it's the break. I'm saying it's breakout season for Jerry Judy. I am. I'll clip this later.
I'm with you on Jerry Judy because I was pumping him up last year, and I wasn't off it yet either. My question to you is: are you going to be willing to spend the third round pick in a redraft league to get him? Because I think that's where he's going to go.
Third round in a
I don't think
in a redraft league.
I think he's going to go by the time we draft. It's going to be like Russell Wilson having chemistry with Jerry Judy. His ADP is going to go up to the third round. I will bank on it that it's by the time like the end towards the middle to end of draft season, it's going to go to that point.
See, so for Dynasty right now, you're not trading for him because whoever has him is not going to trade him for cheap.
Mm-hmm.
In redraft in the third round, I would not be even looking at Jerry Judy because, I mean, if let's say my draft strategy was like elite running back, elite tight end, which a lot of times for me personally, it is for redraft. And then my first wide receiver then would be Jerry Judy, and I wouldn't be comfortable doing that. Like if he is a top 20 guy, let's say he's a top 20 guy this year, which again might be spicy for some, but if he is, you're not taking him as your wide receiver 1 because then you misdrafted, even if he's wide receiver 19, right?
Jerry Judy or Keenan Allen just next year alone? Just next year alone,
I would say Keenan Allen personally.
I would too.
Yeah.
I agree. I was asking the Judy lover.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good one though.
I do think like when it's all said and done, this is going to be, you know how like every year the drafts are always different. And it used to be a bunch of running backs with like 1 or 2 wide receivers. This year, it's going to be so many wide receivers. You know, you're going to see like the Jamar Chases, the Justin Jeffersons, Davante Adams, all those type of guys. They're going to be, you know, potentially you might have Tyreek Hill go in the top 12 picks, you know, depending. Like there's going to be a lot more wide receivers taken. Or Cooper Kupp, obviously. Like there's going to be so many wide receivers pushed up. Deebo Samuel, like a second round pick. That's why I think someone like Jerry Judy is going to fall into the third round. If you went running back, there could be a chance that like he's going to be the wide receiver you have to target if you are trying to get a wide receiver, a top 20 wide receiver by the time you get to the third round. So it's going to be very interesting to see how that does play out and where his ADP does settle. I'm very much on Jerry Judy as well. I do think he's going to be the number 1 in that offense, and he's going to be, I don't know if he's going to be necessarily worth a third round pick, but I'm definitely going to try to, I mean, I'm sure everybody's going to want to get some shares of him.
Let me ask you guys this. So let's say between your first 2 picks, you take 1 running back and 1 receiver, right? Let's say you even have the 101. You take Jonathan Taylor, and at the 212, you get a let's say a Tyreek Hill, right? Let's say he falls for whatever reason, right? He hits somebody else again, and no one knows what's going on. He falls to the 212. All right, let's just say those 2 guys. With your 301, would you rather take a Jerry Judy, where he's now going to be your wide receiver 2, or like a Josh Jacobs to slot into your running back 2?
Me personally, I'd probably take the running back because of how thin it is. And a lot of people will say, well, look what happened this year. You know, if you went 0 running back, I'm not going to go on a rant, but some people will say, if you went 0 running back, you could have got Patterson and this guy and this guy and that guy. But at the same time, I draft heavy for running backs. I could have gotten those guys later too. Like I don't know why people assume that if you do draft heavy running back that you can't go later in the draft and grab Leonard Fournette, because that's something I for sure would do. I would probably take the running back because of how thin the position is. and I'd probably start like taking shots on a bunch of guys with some upside after that for the wide receiver position. But Mendy, what's your thoughts?
I mean, it always comes down to like roster construction at that point. But
Yeah.
I personally, I'm not a huge Josh Jacobs guy, so that would sway my decision towards Judy. But if it was a running back in that range that I did like, I would definitely go for the scarcity of a running back at that point for sure.
Yeah.
But it would have to be the right player.
Yeah. And you'd have to see who else is available. Again, like we say to people all the time, like, get your tiers together, because if Jacobs is in the same tier as 4 other running backs of yours in your rankings that are still available, then you can chill, But if he's like one of the everybody's drafting heavy running backs, you kind of got to play the room. But
in that scenario, and I'm thinking about this out loud as we go, like you have another 24 picks till you get back to your pick again in the 4th.
Yeah,
if it's a snake draft. So you're talking about, are you comfortable with Judy as your receiver 2, meaning your running back 2 is going to be maybe a James Conner type that we don't know? I highly doubt he has the same kind of year he had last year. Or are you more comfortable with not necessarily Josh Jacobs, but someone in that tier? And
Montgomery or something. I don't know.
Right. And then not a Bears fan, definitely. And then in the 4th round or so, as a receiver, you get a maybe even a Keenan Allen type in that 4th round. That I think and that's why you got to do all these mock drafts. Like really, once you like know where you're going to be slotted in, like you got to be doing these mock drafts to see, if I do this and this, what do I have to do later on? Where if I don't take a running back, like what are my options going to be for my running back 2 in round 7? Like how screwed am I going to be?
Yeah.
And if you're not comfortable with that, you change things up.
Yeah, and just be prepared before that even, situation hits you, because 1, you'll have an idea of guys you would take in that range, and then for 2, Abe's home league draft and my home league draft are probably 2 completely different things at the end of the day. So you kind of just got to play how things fall to you in that. But it's good to be prepared. But talking about Jerry Judy and what happened with the Broncos, timing is key in dynasty, right? If you want a Jerry Judy, you probably had to make that trade move before Russell Wilson was the quarterback, because prices change. So even similar to free agency, timing is key. So what I want to talk about as we transition into this piece of the podcast here are targets of ours that we want to trade for potentially before free agency hits on March 16th. Because, again, I made a board session the other day. I said, hey, if you want a wide receiver and you are targeting one of these free agent wide receivers, the Jujus of the world, the Sharks, even down the list, Russell Gage, whoever, you should do it before they find a new team, because as soon as they find a new team, everybody's sleeper app is going to go off, and then their prices change, right? So we want to make moves before that happens. So pre-free agency dynasty trade targets, guys you are targeting right now before free agency hits. And we'll start with David on the bottom there. Who is somebody that comes to mind that you want to target now for dynasty leagues?
To me, I think an easy answer is Allen Robinson. And I know, obviously, that everybody's got a sour taste in their mouth after last season. I know I do, because he crushed my Scott Fishbowl team. High hopes for him. But you got to remember, so you look at his track record, 2015 wide receiver 6, 2016 the wide receiver 24, 2019 wide receiver 8, and 2020 the wide receiver 9. He's been a wide receiver 2 or better in 4 of the 5 healthy seasons he's played, and a top 10 wide receiver 2 of the last 3 seasons. Last year, if you remember, he had hamstring injuries and COVID, where he missed 5 games, and his report, he actually lost 10 pounds because of the COVID stuff. So I don't think he was right all of last year. And you also got to remember that he was basically playing kind of on a franchise, or he was playing on a franchise tag, and he's part of a coaching staff that I don't think he was too fond of. So the rush of him trying to go out there and play, I don't think it was there for him. And I think he's ready to bounce back. You obviously also look, if you say he's old, he's only 28 years old. He's actually younger than Devontae Adams and Tyler Lockett, and he's the same age as Stephon Diggs and Cooper Kupp. So I think the he's old argument isn't necessarily fly here. And then, can you imagine him with a good quarterback? He's played with Chad Henne, Blake Bortles, Mitch Trubisky, Chase Daniels, Nick Foles, Andy Dalton, and we're hoping Justin Fields can make a huge leap this coming year, but obviously as a rookie, not quite where you want him to be yet. So like at that point, imagine Allen Robinson in Kansas City as the wide receiver 2 in Kansas City. We saw what Sammy Watkins did there. Could be a very productive player for them. And so again, I think if you get a notification on your sleeper app, Allen Robinson signs a 2-year, $20 million contract with the Kansas City Chiefs, his value is going to skyrocket. So That's why I would say go get him right now while everybody's still sour on him, doesn't know where he's going to go. And I think that you'll be a good basically way to buy him as low as you can.
Yeah, with A-Rob, I think he failed, if I'm not mistaken, to hit like 11 fantasy points on the year. So a lot of people were very maybe. A lot of people were very frustrated with his output, obviously. At times, it looked like he was kind of checked out. Other times, the quarterback play was not super competent. But he does have that, like you said, track history of being very fantasy relevant and being a good wide receiver despite iffy situations. So there's a lot of teams right now that can use Allen Robinson. Everybody is looking at the NFL draft, right? And starting, to throw out the Drake Londons and the Traylon Burks and, you go down the list, all these wide receivers, when you got a guy who a lot of people are going to be interested in bringing him in. Abe, thoughts on A-Rob? And then same question to you about a guy in Dynasty you are targeting before free agency hits.
Yeah, so the only reason Allen Robinson isn't my selection here is because Mendy chose it before me. Like I absolutely love that answer. Like, I was like typing it in, like, oh god, it's already there. So yeah, I love Allen Robinson, his potential for wherever he goes. Wherever he goes, it's going to be an upgrade. It just seemed like he didn't want to be in Chicago last year. They, in the middle of the season, decided, you know what, you don't want to be here. We don't want you here either. We're gonna make you suit up and get your ass kicked, and we're just gonna not throw you the ball at all, ever. That's kind of what it seemed like. My guy, though, is also young, 25 years old, and he also has never had a quarterback because similarly he played for Jacksonville like Allen Robinson, and that's DJ Chark. I mean, we all love this dude 2 years ago, and then there's been absolutely no quarterback play whatsoever. He's coming off an injury that I don't think is going to be one of those very severe, long-term lasting kind of things. I think he's pretty much healed. Wherever he goes, if he slots in as a receiver 2 anywhere with that speed, I mean, that dude's going to be so dangerous. And I'm buying him on the absolute dirt cheap right now because everyone's so scared of the injury. And they look at his numbers from the last couple of years and they go, oh, well, it wasn't really great. Well, you know what? He didn't exactly have the best teams around him. I mean, he was just playing for a team that has back-to-back number 1 overall picks. Jacksonville sucks. They're just absolute trash. So there's nothing good coming from there except DJ Chark.
All the Jacksonville fans are now just tuning out from the show.
That's fine. You can come after me. I don't care.
Our listeners just went from 2 to 1. So thanks a lot, Abe. Unbelievable.
That's what I do. I bring numbers to where they should be. Number 1. Number 1. You meant number 1 overall, correct? From number 2 overall to number 1 overall. Congratulations. Well done. Very, very proud. Very proud of my contributions here. But I mean, Mendy, it's exactly like what you said with Robinson. If Chark goes to Kansas City, what if he ends up in Baltimore and gives Lamar Jackson a legitimate receiver that knows how to get open, minus Hollywood Brown that just runs past everybody? I mean, you're talking about a guy that potentially is putting up back end wide receiver 1 numbers.
Yeah, with Chark too, it's interesting to see the swift change in his dynasty value, because at one point when I'm looking back to 2019, he was scoring points in the 30s at times. I mean, the guy was going off pretty consistently the first 5 weeks of the season, had a little bit of a dip, and then again was exploding for these big games. 2020, the same sort of thing. He'd have these games where he would score 29, 27 points for fantasy. So when people rostered that guy and he was doing that, for the price of a flex play, because that's probably where they drafted him at, his stock went up. But then after the injuries and not looking great when he was healthy, the price has changed. I would say that you could probably get Chark for a late second, right? If
Sure.
you were trying to buy, or an early third. Yeah, I would assume that.
Sure.
So two receivers there. A lot of teams that need wide receivers badly. My question to you guys, putting you on the spot here, and if you want to think about it for a second, that's fine. I'll just put like a timer on my phone or something. But pick one spot. You don't have to go into this big analysis of why this guy fits in the scheme of things and this and that. Pick one spot for A-Rob and Chark that you'd like to see, and whoever gets the ideas here first, you guys can jump in.
Well, I like that Chark in Baltimore.
And I do want to say before you go, I know Abe's got to bounce out pretty soon. So if he disappears from the screen, it was pre-planned. He doesn't not like me or anything. But go ahead.
I like Chark in Baltimore, like I mentioned. I think that can give Lamar a legitimate number one. Allen Robinson to Detroit makes a lot of sense, where he has the opportunity to be the number one guy, get a lot of targets, and kind of give a giant FU to Chicago all at the same time.
A lot of incentives right there. Same question to David. What would you like to see?
I think the Raiders are going to bring somebody in. They need receivers bad. So I could see Chark going to the Raiders. I think Robinson's going to go to a contender. I keep saying Kansas City, so I think I'm just putting the picture.
Not a Chiefs fan. Definitely not a Chiefs fan.
I think he's going to Kansas City. I think he's going to be like what Sammy Watkins did a few years ago.
That is interesting, and a lot of people were throwing in the Chargers into the mix, and they're kind of out of the mix because they're bringing Mike Williams back. And I know Buffalo's a big landing spot.
Mm-hmm.
People want a wide receiver to go, and the Gabe Davis truthers of the world would say the opposite and say absolutely not. But I think that's a team that is going to want to bring in a win now wide receiver because they did it last year with Emmanuel Sanders. I mean, they tried the same thing. They brought in a vet who, ended up being a little bit banged up, but he was another interesting guy that got brought up. So my guy, I didn't even show you guys on the show sheet because I'm just super secretive ever since I saw the Batman movie. But it's a different position. I went with Leonard Fournette, and I said the same thing in the past. Oh, I'm going to make sure we change our screen here. All right. I said the same thing in the past. I think it was on the True North podcast that Leonard Fournette was going to be a juicy grab before he lands on a new team. And then I was iffy. This was, I think, 2 years ago or right before last season. And I think Leonard Fournette being a guy we've seen a good resume for fantasy, a guy that can handle passing work, and a guy that really is a dual threat running back, whether people want to admit it or not. I'm interested. I mean, the Chiefs, Mendy. I mean, they got CEH, maybe the Chiefs, but the Giants, there's a chance they move on from Barkley. Maybe it's just rumors. The Dolphins, the Falcons, the Texans, back with the Bucks for fantasy. 5 20-point weeks out of the games that he played, which was 35.7% of his games. He had 20 fantasy points. Only 5 players had more. Over a point for fantasy points per touch, which I thought is an interesting thing to look at because he does well with what he gets. Only 7 of the top 20 players for fantasy had over a fantasy point per touch. Him and Swift led the league in average targets, which was 6. You would think it'd be like Najee Harris and like Kamara, but it wasn't. It was Swift and Fournette. Only him and Eckler had 7+ target weeks. Dual threat back. Again, I don't think his price today is like astronomical because a lot of people will say, well, he's not 21 years old. And other people will say, well, he just, came off of being banged up once again. But the minute the sleeper, like I said before, the sleeper app goes off and it says Leonard Fournette is now a Dolphin, everybody's eyes are going to light up. So I think now is a good time to go after a guy for, again, a position that's not super deep. But what's your thoughts on Lenny Fournette? Interested, not interested? If there's some pushback, give it to me, man.
No, I don't have any pushback on that, actually. I think, I don't remember if he finished number 1 in receptions among running backs, but I know he was on pace to before he got hurt at the end of the season. Like, he was going to be the RB1 in terms of receptions. And I do think, I forgot where I heard this, but they said they think he's going to go somewhere where he gets paid the most. He's not looking to win a championship anymore. He won a championship. He wants to get paid. So, a team that's going to throw money at him is going to use him. It's not like, hey, man, just you can hop on the team here and we'll use you when we can. Like, he's going to get paid and he's going to get work. And at that point, I'm interested. And if he's getting any type of discount, like let's say he goes to, I think I saw one team throw out the Eagles, or one person throw out the Eagles, and like that they're, Miles Sanders is going to just kind of be kicked to the curb. Like if he's going to be there with Jalen Hurts and be able to get the benefit of the RPO, like, yeah, I'm interested. Or, he goes to Kansas City and he becomes the trusted back in Kansas City. Like, of course, I don't think there's much downside to him potentially. Also, I mean, I don't know where he's expected to be drafted at. Obviously, that's like you said, it's going to change where he goes, but I definitely think there's a lot of potential for that for sure.
And the one part of Leonard Fournette and free agency that I'm most excited for is what happens, following the signing, because like you said, it probably doesn't matter for one, if he's going to a team that's going to win a championship. And for two, if he's following the money, he probably doesn't care who's in that system. It can be the Colts throwing money at him and he'll be like, fuck it, I'm in. So for fantasy, I have a feeling that there's a chance that he goes somewhere that is going to explode Twitter, because it's going to cut into some running back's time in the league right now. So that's something I'm highly interested in. Even though there's a handful of running backs, a handful of teams in the league that definitely need a running back. But Leonard Fournette, again, not a guy that's going to cost you the same sort of price as if you priced out David Montgomery in Leonard Fournette, I bet in your dynasty league, one guy costs more. And that's not me talking about being a Bears fan, but age comes into play, right? And the unknown comes into play. I know you've been looking at this class a lot too. Do you think that, and I'm just putting you on the spot again here too, we're talking about Leonard Fournette. Do you think that the landing spots of like the Breece Halls and the Isaiah Spillers and you go down the list, Kenneth Walker, you think those have a better potential than a guy like Leonard Fournette in free agency, or is it too unpredictable to say right now?
I think it's going to depend on, everybody says it's going to depend on the draft capital, where these guys go, right? Like if these Breece Halls and Isaiah Spillers, if they go to a team from day one where they're going to be the starter and they're going to get a lot of work, then I might be more tempted to go those guys. But if, they go to a team, I'm trying to think of a recent example, like Javonte Williams, for example.
Yeah.
Like if he goes to a team like that, where they're getting drafted, where they're going to be a 1A, 1B situation, then give me Leonard Fournette all day. I'm thinking, is there a possibility he goes to the Dolphins, Leonard Fournette?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, where would you draft him, or where do you think he would be, like in what range if he were to go to the Dolphins, where he would be the guy?
If I was to look at the list, so we're talking redraft here?
I guess like redraft, because in Dynasty, I know he's not valued too high right now.
Yeah. So redraft, top 12 would you? I think it'd be hard to argue against him being top 12 because of seeing him be what was he this year? I mean, at times he was performing as a top 3 running back for multiple weeks in a row. And with the Dolphins, I would assume that he'd be getting both pieces of work. Even if Gaskin's still there and can catch passes, you would still think that Fournette has the capability of being like a top 7 targeted running back still. Yeah. I mean, that's interesting. I think Dolphins are a good spot. I think like if he went to Falcons, people might get nervous about, what happened to Mike Davis, even though I think he's like a lot better than Mike Davis. The Texans is another place. I mean, not a good team, right? But look at like Rex Burkhead getting a bunch of work and being fantasy relevant, so it definitely is interesting with Fournette. But again, as I said before, free agency, if you are interested in guys that are set to hit the market, I would make those moves before they land on a new team. And if you have these guys and you're looking to sell them, just wait, because the minute you're one share of whoever, Juju, let's say you're not really into Juju, but you roster him, the minute he goes to Mendy's Chiefs, the price is going to be outstanding, I'm sure. But we'll cut things off right there, man. Do appreciate you last minute coming on the show. Again, a lot of NFL news this week, so it's good to get different perspectives on things, and then also look at some targets here. But remind everybody where we can find you on social media, and then anything you have coming up, or triple play, or both that you want to plug to end the show here.
Well, first, man, always thanks for having me on the show. It's always fun. Got to have you back on ours because it's been a little bit. So
Down, always.
But yeah, you can find me on Twitter at dmendio2. All my written works, 3013 fan tracks and fantasy points. All my video content right now is triple play. I'll probably be doing some video work for the 33rd team soon. And you can just check out our YouTube channel. That's what we've been pushing the most right now. Closing on 2K subs on YouTube, trying to hopefully get that in the next like month or so. And I think we had a Lamar Jackson video go out today. Tomorrow we'll have Tom Ali joining me, so we'll be able that me and him. He's a 6-time Pro Bowler for the Chiefs. For those that remember him, that'll be out tomorrow too. And just check out our stuff. We work really hard. We have a good team and have a lot of different content.
Absolutely. And if I vouch for one team and I have to vouch for only one team, it's the White Sox. But then it's triple play. It's triple play. No, but yeah, definitely appreciate you coming on. Great team, great members of your team. You guys did a great job recruiting through the process, but a lot of good contributors there under that umbrella. But as far as the P2W Fantasy Podcast goes back at it next week with a guest or guest to be determined. Probably a little bit less last-minute call, but probably not as good as a random reach for a guy like Mendy here. But we'll also be dropping a article sometime tomorrow. It's a collaborative piece. You can check that out on Twitter. Should be a deep league trade target article for Dynasty. But yeah, thanks guys for tuning in, whether it was live here on Twitter or Facebook or in your car, and enjoy the rest of the week.